for such a critical engagement has come, as we believe that those tasked with governance must also occupy their place at the people's table of national dialogue. The process we seek will engage a whole range of South Africans who are organized in political bodies, civil society movements, children and youth organizations, organizations of disabled compatriots, faith communities, business organizations, owners of capitals, farmers and farm workers, unions and representatives of the unemployed, scholars, women's organizations, sporting organizations, representatives of academic and educational institutions, think tanks, professional bodies, grassroots formations, traditional leadership, community-based organizations, rural formations, and other interest groups. It will reach as many sectors of our society as possible. We acknowledge with gratitude the many organizations that have already expressed their support for this endeavor, and indeed believe that such a widespread set of voices will resuscitate the soul of the nation. It must be stressed that the conveners of this call embark on it without predetermining its outcome. Otherwise, we would not be true to its objectives. Rather, it is our expectation that the collective imagination of citizens will organically produce a national compact that is a collective guide to fulfilling the aspirations of our people. Pursuant to this call, the foundations will approach government through the presidency, as well as other stakeholders in civil society and business, to ensure that such a national dialogue is adequately resourced and supported. Thus, to move the process forward, we envisage the following: that a secretariat shall be set up to develop the National Dialogue Program, and we are already committing to meeting as early as in the new week to embark on some of these. Elaborate engagements with different groups and communities across the nation will take place. Priority areas and work streams for dialogue topics and programs of engagement will be identified. Flowing from the dialogue, a national compact will be compiled, considered, and adopted. And the national compact will become the operational program for all sectors of our society, including government, parliament, civil society, and business. You have been provided with details below of institutions that are signatories hereto, as well as for the purposes of communication. But let me read the list of those organizations that are behind this call as it stands. It's the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Chief Albert Luthuli Foundation, the Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy Foundation, the Jakes Gerber Foundation, the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation, the Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe Trust, the Steve Biko Foundation, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and the Umlambo Foundation. This is where the statement stands. I thank you for listening.
Nkosinati, thank you very much for that. Before we come to questions and answers, as has been stated this morning, this is a collective call and a collective effort by the foundations who were just named by Nkosinati. At this point, we would like to invite the foundations to make their supporting statements. First on the list, and I don't know if we do still have a representative, the Mlambo Foundation, if they could please come up. Then they're not here present. Could we then have a representative of the Robert Sobukwe Foundation, please?
I don't know if this thing can move, but let's try. Is that okay?
Some of us are generously proportioned. So. Good morning, colleagues from the foundations, and good morning, members of the media. I am happy to be standing here on behalf of the Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe Trust to also say, with other colleagues, that we did receive the call made by the patron of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, and we now, as part of the other foundations, making that call that we should come together as a nation and discuss some of the great challenges of the day. I am sure, as I'm standing up here, Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who would have been 100 years had he lived to this year, would have been very proud of us, that we don't just sit back and complain and mourn, but take action to do everything that is possible to deal with this matter. There is something that makes me quite excited on behalf of our trust that we have taken this decision. Is because if we don't take it and don't intervene timeously,
you can see out there that there are irresponsible leaders
who are already telling people that the great questions of the day can still be answered through the barrel of the gun. And this is not something that we should encourage. I get very worried when I see young chaps wearing camouflage that are fake, pointing a finger as if they've carried a gun. And I'm sure, Geraldine, they've never even carried one gun during their lifetime. So I'm happy to see that. But I do want also to be bold and address some of the issues that I accept that are addressed here. We need to begin to address also the issue that is rising in the country, because it has really destroyed Africa and some African countries, the issue of ethnicity. It is becoming a challenge. We shouldn't run away from it. Geraldine was my boss in the public service. I don't know if it was there during her time, but now, for instance, even in our public service, if a minister or a director general comes from a particular region, the whole top management of that department will be coming from that region. And then you've seen now during the elections people calling for independent KwaZulu-Natal, independent Western Cape, and so on. So I do think we should address that. Finally, as part of Africa and as Africans, some of us who have lived outside the country and we receive the hospitality of other Africans, we do get worried about the calls. That seems to be close to xenophobia. The issue during the elections of some leaders who now might even be in cabinet, who are saying, Mabambe, let them go, without even talking about the qualification that some of them are here legally. So with those few words, I would like to stand up and say, on behalf of the Sobukwe Trust, we will make this call, we will support it, and we will participate in it fully.
thank you very much to the Sobukwe Foundation, and particularly thank you for reminding us that we are all Africans. We are part of a continent, and what we do is not just for ourselves, but for the cohesion of the continent as a whole. So thank you very much for those words. I would now like to call upon the representative of the Chief Albert Luthuli Foundation to come up and read their statement.
Good morning, everyone. I will just read the message of support. The Chief Albert Luthuli Foundation bases its existence on the life works, character, and principle of its patron, Inkosi Albert John Mvumbi Luthuli. Chief Luthuli's political and leadership legacy can be encapsulated as one that bore humanitarianism, equality, and ethical morality at its core. Given the juncture that South Africa finds itself in, 30 years after the birth of our democratic dispensation, few will deny that much work remains for true equality, poverty eradication, liberation, and freedoms to be realized. CALF understands that the attainment of these noble ends can only be achieved through constant review, assessment, critique, and improvement of South Africa's state policies, architecture, political leadership, and society in general. The stagnation of democratic progress, coupled with clear mounting socio-economic regress, has resulted in the electoral outcomes of South Africa's 2024 national and provincial elections. South Africans have forced upon us a change of the political and leadership landscape of the country. To this end, the initiative and objectives of CODA are not only timely. Moreover, as CALF, we withdraw alignment with CODA as it espouses the works and principles that Chief Luthuli supported and that CALF aims to perpetuate. We are also aware that a similar call for a national dialogue was made by the President of the Republic at the occasion of his inauguration. CALF welcomes the merging of these two initiatives and look forward to deeper collaboration between this civic-led initiative and the government-led initiative. It is accordingly in this regard that we lend our support to the call that was made through the Thabo Mbeki Foundation for this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandile. May I call upon the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation to give their statement? And if you could please just introduce yourself to the media as you speak.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natasha Ali, and I'm the acting CEO of the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo Foundation. As the Tambo Foundation, our mandate is to preserve, promote, and protect the legacies and values of both Oliver and Adelaide Tambo. The values for which our honorees stood and the values for which our foundation stands are those of integrity, honesty, accountability, courage, and humility. With this national dialogue, we see this as an opportunity to not only make serious efforts in realizing everyone's constitutionally enshrined rights, but also reminding everyone of their corresponding responsibilities to the rest of the nation and to each and every one of us. We know this is the beginning of a long, arduous journey, but this is why this call for a national dialogue is coming now at the beginning, to ensure that public involvement is sewn into the very fabric of this national dialogue. This is not an instructive process. It is not foundations telling the rest of the nation or government telling the rest of the nation what to do. This is collaborative, and we want collaboration sewn into the foundation of this national dialogue, having the people tell us how they want this nation to be governed, reiterating the people shall govern call from the Freedom Charter. This is an opportunity, as I've said, to reaffirm our commitment to our country and its development by re-emphasizing the call for the people to govern. It is also about having real, honest, and very difficult conversations, but very necessary conversations that need to take place in order for us to realize the future that we so desperately want. And while we are all together at the beginning of this journey, I'd like to just reaffirm the Oliver and Adelaide Tambo's thanks to all of you for the creation of this process, and affirm our support for this national dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the list, we have the representative of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Thank you. And please introduce yourself again.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow foundation members and the media. My name is Mandla Ngombe. I am the Deputy Chairperson of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. We have come here today Oh, okay. Okay. My name is Mandla Ngombe. I am the Deputy Chairperson of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. The reason we are here today is to lend support to the initiative that has been on the cards with a range of foundations here. We stand here on behalf of the foundation, which is named after Ahmed Kathrada, who is known for his activism. And we think that this process is going to be one of those activist moments. We do want to say that today we all have to understand the political moment that has been created by the electorate in the recent elections, provincial and national. And it's important to understand that, and that actually we are at an inflection point for our country. We can move forward, we can move backwards, and we think that this initiative is helping us to move forward. We want to say just one or two things. One of them is that as we support this process, we should also understand that there is a level of cynicism about summits and about dialogues, because people think that there's nothing that is coming out of that. So this exhaustion and cynicism towards summit must be that the summit that we are creating must actually impact and change the lives of the people. So in other words, avoid another talk shop, and avoid long shopping lists of demands and everything, and also strike the balance between a participatory process as it's envisaged by this process, as well as the urgency of the pressing issues, challenges that our country has. So the moment, I think it's important. What we also want, because there are other like parliamentary process, government process, and ourselves, strike that balance is going to be very important. as the Katrada Foundation, we see ourselves as not reinventing the wheel, actually reinforcing what is happening here and what is going to be happening at government level. We see ourselves as amplifying those voices. We also want that this process, whatever is being done, is democratized. And our sense is that that democratization of what's going to be happening is actually what is being envisaged by the team here. So on those bases, we think that, another colleague has actually mentioned it, that this initiative seeks to inspire active citizenry. And that for us is very important, because active citizenry should be a permanent feature of our public lives, as it were. As the foundation, we are known of our activism, and I think there's been moments in the recent past where I think South Africans have come fully on board, whether it's in the area of state capture, when our country was going in a different direction, Save South Africa, Future South Africa, defend our democracy, etc. So this process seeks to inspire civil society networks as they are, particularly also ensuring that there's a broadest possible engagement by all actors in society. And I'm happy that beyond these foundations that have been put here, I see other foundations like the de Klerk Foundation. I don't know whether there's Helen Suzman Foundation here, but this moment, which is an inflection point, requires that South Africa should meet together and chart the way forward. So in that context, in that regard, we are in full support of what is being said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reminding us of the principle of active participation in our democracy. I would now like to call upon the representative of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation to also come and give their support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. One advantage of being the last speaker, you can just, in my language, you just say in one word, and then you sit down. Or, as you say in other languages, all protocol observed, and then you can sit down. So I don't intend to be long. I'm Vincent Mapai, and I represent the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. My chair is here, and she has already spoken earlier. And I'm here to say we at Thabo Mbeki Foundation, first of all, are very grateful to our sister foundations that we can work together and put our heads together on what needs to be done in consultation with the rest of the country to save, not only to save the country, but to actually advance and let it prosper. Even at the best of time, it is good after 30 years to step back, look in the back mirror, and see what are you learning from the back that you require to take us forward. And this is important. The emphasis is going to be on what is taking us forward. I did say this is necessary at the best of times, but unfortunately, we are at the worst of times, which makes this even a greater and more desperate imperative that we should embark on this. And it is quite funny that a country like South Africa could be going through the challenges that my colleague Geraldine actually outlined. They are also outlined in the statement. I'm saying it is ironic that we should be talking about those difficulties because we are a very, very talented country. We are heavily resourced with natural resources. We are heavily resourced with the quality of our people. And one of the things that we should be looking at later on, I know we are not predetermining what needs to be done, but one of the questions we need to ask is how can such an endowed country end up where it is? How did we end up here, and how do we make sure we do not end up where we are today? Because it is very ironic that we should be the envy of everyone, and we are ashamed even of ourselves. I think we need to ask that question. That is why this dialogue is very, very meaningful. We like the idea that this is inclusive. Nobody should be excluded. It should be inclusive. Let everybody come in. Let us listen to each other, and let us pool our resources together as a country. So, as a foundation, we join you in inviting all South Africans to bring their talent to the table, to be generous with their expertise, and to be generous with their love for the country. Let us hope that in elections where 40% of eligible voters refuse to vote, that this dialogue and this forum can become a place for the disenchanted also, to raise their excitement, to raise their hope in democracy, because the worst thing we can have is growing cynicism about democracy, as we have been saying. So we invite all South Africans. And lastly, people with cameras at the back there, the media, let me remind you what you already know. You are part of civil society. So in this matter, you are going to be both players and referees, we hope. And your greatest strength is that your operatives, and I use that word deliberately, are on the ground, they are closer to communities. Let us bring all of that at the table and make South Africa great again. Thank you.
That brings us to the close of the statements from the foundations. Before we go to the question and answer session, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the de Klerk Foundation. I think their presence here today is indicative of when we speak of a collective effort of including all South Africans, and as Geraldine used the term, a whole of society approach. I think it is very much in the spirit of that whole of society approach that we welcome you here today and look forward to multiple engagements. Thank you very much. Before we close, we would also obviously like to have a question and answer session. The questions, if I may call up Nkosinati and Natasha Ali to take the questions from the members of the media. Thank you.
Thank you, Sisi. I was reminded as the Robert Sobukwe Foundation walked up, and there was a rearrangement. That on some occasion I visited your mother, Dali, at home, and we had tea, and she opened the family album and showed me all sorts of secrets of the family. And at some point she had to walk out, and my chair was, let's say, uncomfortably close to the wall. And she said, Ntanam, my heritage won't allow me to get through. I'd like for us to handle the question and answer part as follows. We are here, but primarily to deal with the questions that relate to the content of the statement. That is what we have all signed up on. If there are questions that spill beyond, you then will allow us to bring in the institutions to which they are directed so that they also are able to deal with those. I take the mandate issue very, very seriously. So before we start, I had said to the director I will just do the foundation, the Steve Biko Foundation's echo at this point. And briefly, what is playing out before us is exciting for a number of reasons. One is that we have observed over the past 30 years that although we collectively have contributed to the leadership of this country through the various legacies, some of whom are represented here, we do not do a diligent job of drawing down the leadership lessons and using them to build our nation as we go forward. And so it's quite exciting to see this cohort of foundations knowing the eponyms after whom they are named and how they contributed to this country. Secondly, most of these foundations are not new in the area of dialogue. Most of them have, as part of their programming, dialogue. So there is already some infrastructure that we hope we can pull together and build on as we stretch out into communities to further this call and the attendant conversations. From the perspective of the Steve Biko Foundation, perhaps there are just two things that I should highlight. The first is that he represented a cohort of young people. And that entire crop of leaders that have emerged, we see the likes of Geraldine and them, some of them were influenced, some were there. All of them were 30 and beneath in age. Now in South Africa, we have a very generous definition when it comes to youth, up until we are 35. But this call must remind us that the people that we want around the table, the institutions, the associations, the movements that we refer to, we would wish of them to field young people because it is their future that we must help redefine. When we talk of the next 30 years, some of us may not be around. The second part, there is a stubborn person who says I'll be around. The second part from the Steve Biko Foundation's point of view is that that cohort of leaders in the late 60s and 70s seized a moment to help define our collective national consciousness. I used the word forced consciousness earlier on because it's quite evident that the pressure points on our identity have flared up issues of race, as has been said, ethnicity, issues that we must manage as this country. And we have the vocabulary to manage that. Biko not only taught us black consciousness, he challenged white South Africa to deal with his own consciousness and collectively for us to be at a better place in respect of this issue of consciousness. And so we will bring that legacy to the table in the understanding that those who occupy their place at the table are wanting to make this country work. If they have an agenda other than that, we commit from the Steve Biko Foundation that their seat at the table would be extremely uncomfortable. Right. And now I'd like to then open it up and we will deal with the issue of questions. Can we have some hands perhaps? And then we will see how many hands have we got? One, I'll go anti-clockwise. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where is 5? Okay. There's 2 on the floor. 5, okay. 1, let's take them. 1, 2, 3, and go through the hands up, going up to the left. I think that if there's two more, there's 6 then in total. Please identify yourself, first of all. We will note the question. Please, if you, it would also help you if you are specific as to who it is directed at, and then we will manage that as best we can.
Thank you very much. It's Zanda Mobile from Newsroom Africa. You noted that you're not trying to make this another talk shop. How far the discussions in terms of the structure of this national dialogue and ensuring that there is progress with the government, since it's going to be a collaborative effort? Linked to that, we're currently in the middle of talks of a government of national unity. Some are saying it's a grand coalition. As the foundations, have you taken a position on how you are defining this, and what will the nature of your relationship be with a GNU grand coalition or whatever, given how fragmented it would seem that this process has been? Because then you may not actually get anywhere if it doesn't seem that the core structure that's meant to be leading this process isn't united.
Let's take the next question.
Romain Chanson for RFI. You said that we are at the worst time, it's a crisis. The GNU has not been announced yet. Don't you think that this new government could be the answer of your concerns? And have you engaged the Nelson Mandela Foundation?
So you will assist me with your name, please.
Romain. Romain.
The third question.
Okay, I'm Thabo student in Boston Media House, also intern at SABC. With regards to youth issues, how does the dialogue plan to ensure that the youth are included in the decision-making and governance and dominate key economic sectors to ensure the prosperity of the country?
Thank you. We'll take the fourth question.
Buleli Treaty Jones, ENCA. The results of this election point to an increasing fragmentation in our society, just like you've mentioned. Is this a sign that citizens have lost hope in our democratic practices? And what are you going to do to ensure that you restore that hope? That's number one. And number two, with the GNU on the cards, are you confident that this could chart a way forward for this country and bring, in terms of hope, a new dawn for the people of this country? Thank you.
Final one.
Here. A number of questions from my side. Critics view that the ANC is selling out the liberation struggle by going into coalition with the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Fund Plus. How do you respond to that? And the second,
you being?
And the organization, all foundations here.
We'll be here till the cars are coming.
In fact, let me state that all my questions are directed to the organization.
Okay.
Yeah. And what does the foundation think, the organization think about the GNU condition to make Orania a constitutionally exclusive Afrikaner community? Third one, what is the foundation's take on the argument that markets are exercising too much power over the South African political system? I just want to know if this is not a concern. And the last one, I promise. Foundations like Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu are not members of this organization. What informs the composition of this organization? And did you reach out to these foundations?
All right. Let me deal with this as follows. Let me try and harvest some of the issues that relate to the statement, and then we are going to spread. There is immense wisdom at this table, right? So let me deal first with the foundations like the Nelson Mandela Foundations and others that you've mentioned, right? The process was to reach out to as many institutions as possible. So I would urge you to read only this into the fact that you may not see some of the foundations, that their own internal processes have not been completed yet, because each one of us had to take this invitation to our governance structures and to wash it through. Some institutions were able to do that swiftly, others are still doing that. But the fundamental principle is that all those institutions are desired around this table. In respect of Nelson Mandela in particular, we are at the sanctuary as we speak. We have a general commitment from them about this matter, and they are completing their internal processes, and we should see them here soon. So that is the spirit of this. It extends both to the foundations as well as this vast network of institutions that we've referred to in the statement. Then let's start perhaps with there are questions related to this GNU. I think that one we are going to bring to the table, right? Because the purpose of this was to read the statement. To the extent that questions are beyond, we will bring to the table. So maybe what I'll do, I will respond on the GNU thing in respect of Zianda, and it came up again in yours, right? The GNU has in its own document referenced that the issue of a national dialogue, at least the statement of intent refers to a national dialogue. So it would seem that those that are wanting to be signatories there too are at least settled on that principle of a national dialogue. But as we said, we see this as a very long table. There is a place for those in governance, and there is a place for people well beyond those who are in governance. So to the extent that they can settle their issues in the GNU, it would be our wish to see the representations of whatever form of government we will have going forward at the table. At least that would be my take on the matter from the perspective of the Steve Biko Foundation. I'd like to maybe just open it up to a few more comments, the GNU issue, because I think it ties Zianda and your questions. Any comments from the table? From the other foundations?
So,
Geraldine?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, Dr. Could you please go to the podium for some?
Sorry. Thank you. I believe Nkosinati responded to the first question that had come up from Zianda, which covers the engagement and relationship with the GNU going forward. I mean, there's no question about that. However, on what our views are on the GNU and all that, and all the questions that came from Sunday World and so on, we haven't really sat as foundations to debate this issue and to reach a decision on it. And you would recall when Nkosinati started reading out the call, he said that even the call that has been adopted here was as a result of a lot of debate. It wasn't somebody put something on the table, we all agreed with it, and we're living happily ever after. And similarly, we may have different views, nuanced around particular issues related to the GNU or the partners involved, or around, is this a coalition or not? Is the ANC selling out or not? As far as I'm concerned, as chair of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, we believe that the GNU is a decision that has been arrived at by the National Executive Committee of the ANC through a particular process, there are very clear terms that's to govern it, and we are awaiting that outcome. But to expect a common position from us as foundations at this point would be premature. I think a lot of this will come out of the process going forward. There's a lot we need to engage on. Have citizens lost hope? And I'm sorry I'm jumping the gun, Nkosinati and Natasha, but I just want to read a message that I received whilst this process is taking place. This comes from someone, and the person said, "The task ahead is not misunderstood, but this is so invigorating. Despair sorted, am a happy citizen." So I thought that just captures what's coming from out, and there's a number of other messages, and I'm sure you guys received it as well as others around the table, but I think that captures it. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine. So I think Zianda, that in part deals with the question that you asked, which were also asked by the Sunday World. There was a question about the youth issues and the youth inclusion and so forth, right? It is the position of the foundations to involve youth formations as best we can. I do believe that the success of this and the conversations to flow from it are dependent on the participation of young people. What will happen in our discussions, we had indicated that we would meet for the first meeting to deal with the structure issues, including the secretariat and so forth, which will give us the detail to reach out to those institutions. But we know the corners where youth are organized. We know both youth formations that are in place. We know where to find them through religious institutions, for instance, such as the South African Council of Churches and others. And all of those avenues will be what then the team is working, the commitment being to ensure that this is as representative of young people as can be possible. Khomein, I want to make sure that you are covered. You had asked about the Nelson Mandela Foundation, to which we responded. I'm sorry, is there part of your question that has been lost?
No, the GNU, you answered it.
Okay, that has been also attended to. I think we have covered those. Is there a question that we have left in the first round?
Just to help somebody that was raising something about Orania.
Oh.
No, in the CODESA committee,
What you approach?
with that matter, Tozamile Bota was there. That person can have time.
I was not going to be responding. I didn't listen to
I think, Zianda, you'd asked how far in the process are we, and how we're going to interact with government, right?
Yeah, but also, I mean, maybe I should be more pointed. So this thing of having a long table,
yeah.
The problem is South Africans might be tired of a talk shop. So having a long table could mean a very prolonged process, and yet there are other things that are happening. For instance, parliaments, there's different kinds of views. So the situation could be deteriorating while you're just extending the table. So fast tracking it, youth participation, how soon? That's what people want to know.
So let me clarify the long table. The long table issue is in respect of participation. That's the primary emphasis, in respect of participation. We are, however, also putting in place a conversation that will help us not only deal with issues of tomorrow, but issues of the next 30 years, right? Now, if you are familiar with the governance process, here is normally what happens, at least as I understand it. as we speak, a government that comes into place is dealing with annual performance plans that are already in place, right? The government also has got what they call a 5-year strategic plan that deals with the more 3 to 5 year scenarios, right? This process is to feed into those conversations, the medium to long-term outlook of the country. We are aware, of course, that there is an unsettled GNU, which in outcome will also inform how those conversations play out around this table. Okay.
I think also just to say, and to be completely transparent, we are definitely at the beginning of this process. And I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of. And the reason it isn't shameful is because we want to start this off on the right foot. So to say that we're, you know, far along in the process and we know how this is going to pan out and we know what we don't. And I think that's really okay that we don't know. There is space at this metaphorical table for cynicism, for skepticism, but then do something. Be cynical, be skeptical, but then still come to the party, come to the table and voice those things, and then help, as you are an active citizen, help us along in this process. It's your duty to this nation. I think that's it.
Is there a next round of questions?
No, I think teacher wanted to wrap.
Oh, you want to wrap? Oh. Okay, we'll take just 2 more hands and then we'll close it. Okay, we'll take the 2 hands that we hadn't taken. 2 hands we have not taken. Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is David Jokweni. I'm a camera operator and a documentary filmmaker. So I just like the whole foundations coming together. So what we've done, we've formed a Soweto cycling club in Deep Blue, Soweto. So we've got a group of about 50 kids. We just get them to cycle around Soweto. But we're extending our program now into storytelling, because it's a group of us, we're creatives, most of us are photographers or whatever, but now we're getting the young people to tell stories through visual medium. That's what we do. Because we've identified that a lot of things that are happening in the township, young people are getting into drugs, but the issue is identity issues. Some people get into all of those things because they don't really know who they are. So we kind of tell them about the works of Utatu Sobukwe, Utatu Biko, and the books that we've read. But basically, as creatives, we're also kind of doing something in the townships. So we're spreading our program now to Eastern Cape and other areas. So I just wanted to pitch that. So yeah, we just focusing mainly on identity issues. And there's a big identity crisis happening, which causes young people to get into drugs and all of that. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. It's not a question.
Thank you, Tavi. But it does do what we were advised by Dr. Mapai, to say that there is an expectation for people, even those around this room, to see this not as just a story, but to see themselves as part of the telling of the story. And I think that for institutions that are already organized, our advice would be to direct your expressions of interest towards our secretariat so that we can pull those energies into this. Right. There was really one more hand there, but I see now you're growing.
Yes, new one.
Okay.
Morning, Alpha Ramuswana here from Eyewitness News. Mine is just a point of clarity. I think most speakers who spoke mentioned that they don't want to predetermine the outcome of the dialogue. It's not just better to be clear to South Africans what exactly you want to achieve by convening this dialogue. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned that it wants to also repair the broken democracy, for lack of a better word. What do you attribute this to? Why do you think that we are here today? Why do you think we're here? Why do you describe this democracy as one that needs to be made? Thank you.
Okay. And maybe your hand,
my name is Amanda Khoza. I'm a presidency correspondent for News 24. In one of his State of the Nation addresses, the president mentioned or announced that he'd like to form a social compact within 100 days. We know that obviously those 100 days lapsed and you were subsequently criticized by former President Thabo Mbeki. I just want to know if this dialogue is contributing to the formation of the social compact, or is it something completely different? Because it's sounding like the vision that was proposed initially, and then obviously the gears are moving with this process.
Let me start with that last question, and maybe just to bring better clarity to what it is that we are doing. The call that we are making is a call, if we were to describe it, that is a bottom-up call. There's been dialogue happening in our country. There's been dialogue happening within government, political formations. What we are trying to do is to do a bottom-up call so that there is no discussion about the future of our country that is not informed by the people of our country, right? At elections, what citizens do is that they give politicians the opportunity to organize themselves to lead them. And we have just done that. What we hope we can do with this process is to give a list and areas of priority that define better how it is that we wish to be governed. Questions were asked about the GNU that are yet to be discussed. But it is concerning from the perspective of the Steve Biko Foundation that the discussion that is happening now is about position. Even from institutions that were saying we don't want cadre deployment, they are busy deploying cadres as we speak, right? And the agenda of what it is that must be done for this country has not quite landed from those that have just been given a mandate, right? And so that would be something that we wish to contribute to. Why are we here? And I'll open this question also to the table in terms of some of the challenges that we've outlined. But we have outlined generally the areas that are of concern to this country. The purpose of the table is to then have a detailed reflection on those. And we are quite clear about the things that we want as an outcome. If you go back to the statement that we've just read, right? In the second paragraph, we outline 3 areas that we said we want. The first one is to develop a common vision, we say in the statement. And then through our collective agency, and this is where this process perhaps departs from others, in that it places the responsibility to do that in the hands of our citizens, right? Steve Biko had a way of describing this. We cannot continue to be spectators in a game in which we should be players. And that is what we are trying to accentuate, right? To intervene and bolster our substantive democracy, right? And the challenge is that although our electoral democracy is firmly in place, we are in the habit of disengaging as citizens in the 4 years between that. We must improve the quality of our substantive democracy, right? And the power of those that govern us originate from people. It is time for people to say, unto the people power shall return, right? And so in so doing, we then hopefully can recalibrate our trajectory so that 30 years from now, we are not asking anew, why are we here? Because then the real question we should be asking is, what have we done about it all along, right? And those are the things we seek to do through this dialogue. Thank you.
Now, I think it's important that we draw a distinction between lack of interest in voting and contrast that with what's happening in almost every street across the length and breadth of South Africa. In every street, people are engaged. We've learned from COVID, and we've learned now. People have come together to fix up their potholes, and they've crossed ideological lines to do that. They've crossed political lines to do that. Major towns and cities across the country have found common ground to fix up when municipalities fail. So there is no, I think the notion that people are not interested and not participating is one that we must put aside. What we are seeing is a withdrawal from party political processes. And there's a huge distinction. What this process needs to be about, this dialogue, is how do you harness that energy that exists out there from street committees to Stockfells and everybody else that are involved in just getting organized to get through day-to-day life into a structured dialogue process that focuses on the core issues. Now, if you can imagine, if something like this had existed in Gauteng or Johannesburg today, a structured dialogue process would have meant that the water institutions would have engaged with the citizens of this province to have said, here's the problem, this is what we think we must do, but would have come up with the solutions with people involved. What you now have is the exact opposite. We know that repairs need to be done across the city, but nobody understands why. Nobody understands the how. And it is that process of bringing together people in an organized formations with those who are going to be in positions of power to find the solutions that work and to then make sure that we take ownership over it. The long-term benefits of this, the street poles that you see collapsing across the length and breadth of South Africa, that's because people think that it doesn't belong to us, it's governments. And that's the mindset that we have to begin to change through this kind of work. So the possibilities that a government of national unity opens up for greater participation is something that we now need to harness, we need to deepen, and we need to make maximum use of going forward. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for democratic renewal in ways that we might not have imagined up until now.
I think that we should end it there. There was one question related to markets that we didn't touch on. We'll take it, as they say, offline. Colleagues, let's take the opportunity to thank you. The invitation did come out, I think, yesterday. You've come out in your numbers. We are seeing the youth that we want to see, even from the media space. And we want to continue to invite you to journey with us here, as I said, and as Prof said, not only as people who report on this. Let us see how we are going to take the outcome of this to your respective newspapers, to your radio stations, and to your television stations as conversation pieces as we take this message deeper into our society. Thank you very much for turning out in good numbers.
Sorry, just before we close,
I would, before we close, the table continues to grow. I would like to acknowledge and welcome the Duma Nokwe Foundation, who have joined us here today, and we look forward to your participation. If I may just say one final word. The first words of our Constitution, which encapsulates what binds us, are the words, "We the people of South Africa." And it doesn't talk about people to speak on behalf of us. It's about we the people of South Africa. That is this process. It is about we the people of South Africa. Over the last 30 years, perhaps what we did was we forgot that democracy is more than just voting at a national election, voting at a local election, and very few of us voting at a by-election. It's about we the people, and let this process be by we the people. Thank you very much.
Provincial and national levels. Our aim is not to be the leaders of this process, but to initiate and guide it. And in order for the process to be credible, there's a need to identify prominent and credible leaders in communities that have the track record to assist in steering the ship. It is understandable that this process is not going to take a few weeks or a few months. It might be a long and very involved process. As a result, there will be a need for establishing a structure that will manage it in a way that the voices of ordinary people are heard and recorded. President Mbeki also had some thoughts about that